Hey, so I'm not sure if you've heard of this or not. I've just recently heard of this prophecy or this prediction, whatever you want to call it, by a Saint Malachy back in the 12th century. Whether it happened or not, but I'm going to talk about it. It is basically saying that there was going to be 100. He had a premonition that there were going to be 112 popes after that point, and no more. So essentially, the 112th pope would be the last pope before the end of everything. Essentially, so whatever you want to call it, if you're religious, you want to call it the rapture, tribulations, whatever you like to call it, Christ's return, all that kind of thing. But this is what he's saying. So I'm going to read this. I've got a few different things to read with this. So I'm going to read this article here. I'm going to go into the list of popes. I'm going to show you the 112 that he's talking about and how that sort of relates. And then we're going to see what the Encyclopedia Britannica has to say about it. It's kind of funny because they ain't playing no games with this. So this is U.S. Catholic. This is whatever. This is a publication, a religious publication. This is what they say about it. So what is the prophecy of Saint Malachy? No sooner did our new pontiff announce his name as Francis than some prophecy experts took to the airwaves, claiming that the new pope is Peter the Roman, the fulfillment of the prophecy of St. Malachi, that this will be the final pope and the end of the world. Despite the new pope being an Argentine cardinal who chose Francis as his papal name, doomsday believers have tried to salvage the prophecy by arguing that George Mario Bergoglio has Peter somewhere in his birth name, and that the Pope Francis really is a Roman since his parents are Italian immigrants who moved to Argentina. This is what people do when they try and tie in different information like that. Like you see people doing it all the time with like Nostradamus's quatrains, right? They try and interpret it in a way that will make it make sense to something. You know, they try and tie it to something, and it's kind of easy to do that if you're broad enough in your, like, if you're not very specific down to details, it's easier to do that. If you're very specific, it's hard. But that's what they're doing here a little bit. I know from my own Irish family background that many Catholics take these prophecies very seriously. My grandmother's steeped in Irish American Catholic culture, worried that the successor to Pius XII would choose the name Peter, signaling the end of the world. Throughout history, someone is always predicting doomsday, but the hype about Malachy is that they say, or as they say, a bunch of malarkey. The real Malachy was an Irish saint who lived from 1094 to 1148. His alleged prophecies, however, were not discovered until around 1590. The legend goes that Malachy experienced a vision in which he was given insight into popes past, present, and future, and then he recorded this vision as a series of cryptic verses. The prophecies were quite accurate up to about 1590. It's pretty convenient. But then became rather vague, lending credence to the theory that they are a 16th century forgery. Malachy's predictions are contained in a list of 112 symbolic phrases, supposedly representing a list of 112 popes in succession. Most likely, though, the prophecy was created as an attempt to influence the papal election of 1590 in favor of Cardinal Girolamo Simoncelli, by having Malachy's prophecy identify him as the next pope. But Simoncelli was not elected, and Niccolò Sfondrati, who took the name Gregory XV, was. Reading Roman numerals, so a little weird. Prophecy supporters have already claimed that number 111 on the list, the glory of the olive, is Benedict the 16th, because the Benedictines have a branch called the Olivetans, though Benedict himself is not an Olivetan. The prophecy goes on to say the supposed final pope, in the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there will sit Peter the Roman, who will pasture his sheep in many tribulations, and when these things are finished, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people. Papal historian Anara Guru says that despite using the name of Saint Malachy, the prophecy isn't worth paying attention to. The fact that Malachy is a Catholic saint, so some Catholics attribute magical or spiritual qualities to the vision, but they don't tend to grasp is that more than likely the entire thing is forgery. Okay, so here is the list. Here's the list of popes, right? So if you look since they started tracking, Pope Francis, the current pope, who has been in whatever you want to call it, the papal since March 13th of 2013, he's the 266th pope, right? So, and here's what they say about him. So his name is George Mario Bergoglio. He's an Argentine citizen, first pope to be born outside Europe since Gregory III in the 700s, and the first from the Americas. First pope from the Southern Hemisphere, first pope from a religious institute since Gregory XVI in the 1800s, first Jesuit pope, first to use a new and non-composed regnal name since Lando in the 900s, first pope to visit and celebrate a mass on the Arabian Peninsula. Okay, so this is the list. This is the 112 pope list from this supposed prophecy. So here is the last pope, call him the glory of the olive. That's Pope Benedict. And this is what they say about him. They say the proponents of the prophecies generally try to draw a connection between Benedict and the Olivetan order to explain this motto. Benedict's choice of papal name is after Saint Benedict of Nursia, founder of the Benedictine order, of which the Olivetans are one branch. Other explanations make reference to him as being a pope dedicated to peace and reconciliations, of which the olive branch is the symbol. Okay, so they correlate that with this prophecy. They correlate sort of this Olivetan thing or whatever, right? So the last one here, they don't name him here in this, but because this must have been previous too, because they didn't, I guess they didn't know or whatever. But so it says, Peter the Roman, who will pasture his sheep in many tribulations, and then these things will be finished. The city of 7 hills, i.e. Rome, will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people. So many analyses of the prophecy note that this is open to the interpretation that additional popes would come between the glory of the olive and Peter the Roman. So if that were to happen, that would throw the number out, obviously, because we're at 112 at this point. Popular speculation by proponents of the prophecy attaches prediction to Benedict XVI's successor. Since Francis's election as pope, proponents in internet forums have been striving to link him to the prophecy. Theories include a vague connection with Francis of Assisi, whose father was also named Pietro or Peter. Okay, so like you can see, it's a little watery, but this guy, just so you know, if you're not aware, Pope Francis is currently 87, turns 88 this year. So he's been the Pope now for 11 years and 151 days, one of the longer popes. I mean, if this is a real thing, we're probably going to see the fruition sooner than later, right? So this is going to be like one of those things where people were talking about December 21st, 2012 or whatever, being the end of the world. Maybe they're talking about it in December 3rd, right? You only got to wait like a couple of weeks to see if you're right. In this case, well, I don't know how long this guy's going to live, but we'll see. we'll see if they're right. This is what the Britannica, the Encyclopedia Britannica, has to say about this guy. So Saint Malachy, born 1094 in Armagh, Ireland, now in Northern Ireland, died November 2nd of 1148. Was celebrated archbishop and papal legate who became a dominant figure of church reform in 12th century Ireland. A fraudulent prophecy concerning the succession of popes was falsely ascribed to him in the 16th century. So like they just right away, they're like, no, they want nothing of this. So yeah, I don't know if this came, of course, I rabbit holed this thing. Read a lot about this stuff. I actually saw it initially on a video where they were talking about it, and then just through the algorithm, just rabbit holed the shit out of this thing. I don't know if any of it's true whatsoever. It's interesting. I mean, they did a little piece on the History Network, I think. I can't remember what the show, whatever. One of those History Channel shows a while back, and they talked about it. It was it's an interesting prophecy that is relevant to now because we're in a we're at the finish line essentially. We've got a pope that's almost 88 years old and is supposed to be the last one. And if you're watching and if you're paying attention to everything going on right now, and you feel like we are close to or maybe in the end times, this might kind of hit for you. I'm not usually a ascriber to that kind of thing, so I don't necessarily believe that we're in the end times. I just believe that humans are cyclically stupid. I think we get into the next thing. I think we're always looking for the next doomsday prophecy. But I could be wrong. I hope I'm not wrong, because if I'm wrong, well, everything's coming to an end soon.